All right, so I'm going to be talking about Japanese very briefly, the Japanese language. In Japanese, it's called Nihongo. It is a combination of logographic symbols and syllabic symbols. So it has three different alphabets. One is kanji, which are the logographic symbols derived from traditional Cantonese characters. So they actually mean the same thing in English as the traditional Cantonese characters. But in Japanese, it's not just one syllable represented by each kanji characters. There are a number of different syllables that can be represented or slightly different meanings as well. And then there's hiragana, which is exclusive to Japanese. And hiragana and katakana are both the syllabic symbols. So they stand for syllables like a, e, u, e, o, ka, ke, ku, ke, ko. Each one would be a different hiragana character. And katakana is used for foreign words, like words in English or other languages, onomatopoeias like wow, bang, boom, but the Japanese equivalents. And then sometimes when people are too lazy to write the really complex kanji, they'll just replace it with a katakana character or a set of katakana characters. I did a little brief description of the three different alphabets here.
Okay, so there are three different alphabets in Japanese. One is kanji, which is these complicated symbols like that. This one means ji, which means time. There's hiragana, which is a lot more simple. This one is just ah. And then there's katakana, which is also symbol and very similar to hiragana. So katakana, we have ka. These all follow a stroke order, which is left to right and up to down. Now, if I take this kanji right here and show you the stroke order a little bit more slowly, you can see I'm moving left to right, up to down, and it's the same stroke order every single time I write it.
So Japanese has similar phonetics to English, but there are a few exceptions. So there aren't any L's in Japanese, and every R in Japanese is pronounced R. So it's not ra, re, ru, re, ro, like in English. It's da, re, ru, re, ro. And then their N sound is a little bit different too. So our N sound like ran, run. In Japanese, it's more like if you say the word running, it's like there's a hidden G at the end of it in Japanese. So they say sang, sang, not sun. There's no afterward. And the U sound is a little bit different too. So say we're saying haru, which is the word for spring. It's not haru. It's haru, not u. Okay. And they tend to skip over vowels as well. So these words, tsukuru and ski, we would probably pronounce tsukuru or suki, but they just go tsukuru and ski. I could probably make about a 20-minute video just on Japanese pitch accent alone. There are several different kinds of pitch accents, and it's basically just the only sense in which Japanese is tonal. So if you don't understand Japanese pitch accent, people will understand your Japanese just fine, which is different from Chinese, which is definitely a tonal language. But if you want to speak fluently and have a native accent, you have to understand Japanese pitch accent. So the word for Sekai in Japanese, which means world or society, isn't sekai, which is more intuitive for English speakers. It's sekai. So you can hear the first part goes up and then the second part comes down. Sekai. Okay. And then the word for school, which you would think would be gakko, but it's gakko, gakko. So it goes up on the second part. There are a few different there are a few other differences in Japanese as well. So actually in Japan, it's rude to use the word you. They often will actually speak about people in the third person when they're asking questions. So in English, we might say, "What is your favorite movie?" But in Japanese, they would phrase it like, what is Takeshi-san's favorite movie?" So that sentence would read, Takeshi-san wa donna eiga ga ichiban suki desu ka? There's also this thing called keigo, which is honorific plus humble language. It's actually very complicated. So they have a social hierarchy that features into their language, like most languages. And I did a short video kind of explaining that as well.
Okay, I'll try to explain this concept of keigo. So keigo is really just honorific language. So there are two forms of language in Japanese. There's honorific and then there's humble. So a lot of the time in Japanese, you use honorific to bring someone up out of respect for them, to raise them above you. And then you use humble to bring yourself down, further raising this person up. It gets a little bit complicated in the sense that, say, you're a secretary working at an office and you're in office A. Now, your boss, you'd usually want to use honorific language out of respect for your boss and humble language for yourself when speaking with him. But let's say you call office B and you're talking about your boss. You would think that you would continue to use honorific language to refer to your boss in this case, but actually, your boss becomes part of your in group per se. So, in order to further respect Office B, you need to bring your boss down with you by using humble form and still continue to use honorific form for the other office out of respect.
There are also a number of honorifics in Japanese, and what those are little tags that you put after people's names depending on your relation to them or depending on social hierarchy. So we have san, which is like the polite, neutral kind of honorific. We have kun when you're more familiar with someone, or if they're kind of below you, you're trying to put them down a little bit. Um, and then there's sensei, which is either a teacher or an expert in a field. There's chang, which is super cutesy, like ultra familiar. Um, Basically, if you're if you're anyone who doesn't know another person and you call them chan, unless it's like a small child, it would be very, very rude and very shocking to call them this. And then you have senpai, which is someone of higher ranking. It's used a lot in high school to denote upperclassmen if you're a lowerclassman. And then kohai is just the opposite of senpai, so a lowerclassman or someone of lower ranking in a setting. And then there's sama, which you almost never use. Um, it basically means like master or something like that. It is ultra, ultra polite. You will hear it people working at restaurants or traditional Japanese inns, which are called ryokan, will use this to refer to customers out of the utmost respect, but it's kind of like because they're waiting on you. So if you want to show a lot of respect to someone, usually san is fine, unless it's like a king or something. Then you might use sama. Okay, and I could probably spend a billion more minutes talking about Japanese, but those are kind of just some of the basic things. I prepared a little lesson in Japanese for you. Hopefully you can follow along. Here we go.
今日は自己紹介、の仕方を教えます。さ、新しい人に初めて会うとき、大抵自己紹介をするはずです。この発表では、これの仕方を教えます。じゃあ、始めましょう。まずは、はじめましてと言った方がいいです。それで、何時か知らなければいけません。朝は発表したら、おはよう。おはようございます。おはようございますと言った方がいいです。昼のこんにちは、と言った方がいいです。こんばんのこんばんは、こんばんはと言った方がいいです。でも、寝るときには、おやすみなさい。おやすみなさいと言った方がいいですね。わかりますか？うん。続けますよ。月は、新しい人、新しい人、うん。新しい人があなたのお名前を習いたがりますかもしれません。うん。名前。じゃあ、お名前の言い方を教えます。これはとっても楽ですよ。お名前と申しますと言いなさい。お名前と申します。例えば、ケフラと申します。うん。わかりますか？うん。月えっと、ここでは生活について言いたがりますかもしれません。多分、時々、どんなのテレビ番号 が好きですか？うん。どんなのテレビ番組見たり、どんなスポーツをしたり言いたがりますかもしれません。多分、学生多分、学生かどうか言いたがりますや、どちらに住んでいるか、どちらに住んでいるか言いたがりますや、犬と猫、うん。犬との猫が持っているかどうか言いたがりますかもしれません。うん。最後に、よろしくお願いしますと言った方がいいですね。よろしくお願いします。好き、曲げなさい。曲げなさい。曲げる。わかりますか？うん。ね、終わりました。今、自己紹介の仕方を知るはずです。聞いてくださってありがとうございました。